I think the public make informed decisions without the need for being in a state of disaster currently.
How do you feel about the anti-vaxxers or people who still, despite all of government's best efforts in urging people to be vaccinated, that there's still a large percentage of the population that haven't gone ahead and vaccinated? Are they putting us at risk? Or do you think that we're at a point now where it doesn't matter whether they vaccinate or not?
I think it's more, in my opinion, the latter. Look, we have, if you look at the total population, about 29% of the total population in South Africa fully vaccinated. But we can't forget that a large proportion of the population has also been previously infected. So the combination of both does mean that we have high levels of population immunity in the community. And so that high levels of immunity are protecting us and have protected us during the previous wave. So I don't think it's too much of a concern. I think those that are most at risk and those who would like to be vaccinated should. But I think ultimately the people should be given a choice to do so at the end of the day.
Okay, the line's a bit crackly. Let's just get one or two more questions to you before we wrap up. What do you think the state of disaster, or removing the state of disaster, should look like? Does that still mean that we'd have to follow the protocols like masking up, sanitizing, and social distancing? Or is that all going to fall by the wayside?
I don't think all of it will fall by the wayside. I believe that certain restrictions will be eased, but I think we have to understand that the virus, COVID-19, is still with us, and we probably will have some light restrictions in place that won't necessarily have to be under a state of disaster. I think things like still understanding that the risk in indoor crowded places is higher may necessitate a need for some restriction on indoor gatherings. And I think the wearing of masks may continue, particularly in indoor spaces. The risk is lower in outdoor spaces, but in indoor spaces where the risk is higher, we may see that continuing. But further than that, I don't think we will likely see any other restrictions in place, given that the risk is much lower, and hoping that the public gaining a better understanding of the situation, being able to take decisions in their own hands.
And finally, we've been hearing noises about a fifth wave, here in South Africa around about May, possibly the beginning of our winter months and flu season as well. How do you think, and obviously variants coming around as far as the fifth wave is concerned, do you think we're relatively okay here in South Africa, that if that does happen, it will be probably pretty mild?
We do hope so, given what we saw during the fourth or Omicron-driven wave, where a large number of infections were seen, but a decoupling or lower rate of hospitalization and death. We hope that going forward, together with that high levels of immunity, which I spoke about, that will signal lower risk or lower severe outcomes. That being said, I think generally what we've seen in South Africa is a surge or resurgence about every 3 months. And each of the 4 resurgences were driven by a different variant. So given that trend, I think it is possible that we do need to watch out for a future surge come the winter months of May, June. And we know that the virus will mutate, so just dependent on what further variants do become dominant. I think we do need to remain alert going into the winter months for further resurgences, but hope that those resurgences will be mild in terms of severe outcomes of hospitalizations and death, as we have seen in recent months.
Ridhwaan Suliman, Senior Researcher at CSIR, shukran very much for always being available to talk to us and sharing your insights on COVID-19 with the listeners and viewers of Salam Media. Go well and Salaam Alaikum to you.
Walaikum salam, and thank you once again for having me.
4 out of 10 exactly. It's time for me to wrap up. A big thank you to the producer Nasreen Naidu. Take care on the roads. And as you've just heard Ridhwaan Suliman saying that you should continuously observe those protocols, very especially in crowded indoor places, and that is sanitizing, masking, and social distancing. Take care on the roads. Till tomorrow morning at the same time. As always, Assalamu alaikum and Khuda Hafiz from me, Julie Ali.